I learned how to become invisible when I was 9 years old, standing in my bedroom window while my parents celebrated my sister like she had just won something extraordinary. It was her birthday, and they had bought her a brand new BMW, wrapped in a giant red ribbon like something out of a movie. Neighbors gathered outside, taking pictures, laughing, congratulating my parents like they had accomplished something remarkable. And the entire time, I just stood there, watching. No one called me down. No one asked where I was. No one even noticed I existed. That was the moment everything clicked for me. Not in a dramatic way. Not in a way that made me cry or react. Just a quiet understanding that settled in and never left. I wasn't forgotten by accident. I was simply never important enough to be remembered. And once you realize that at 9 years old, you start to change. You stop asking for things. You stop expecting attention. You stop believing that if you try harder, someone will finally see you. Instead, you adapt. You get quieter. You observe more. You learn how to exist in the background of your own life without making noise. And what nobody tells you is that when you grow up like that, something else starts to happen. You begin to build your life in silence. Because if no one is watching, no one is limiting you either. And that silence became the reason everything changed. My sister Sophie was 7 years older than me. And from the beginning, it was clear she was everything my parents had ever wanted. She was planned, celebrated, invested in. By the time I came along, that version of them was gone. I wasn't treated badly in a way that left obvious scars. It was quieter than that, which somehow made it worse. Sophie went to a private school that cost more per year than most people made. I went to the public school down the street with outdated textbooks and leaking ceilings. She had violin lessons, language tutors, and summer trips to Europe. I had a part-time job at a grocery store and learned to save every dollar because I knew better than to ask for more. And the strange thing is, for a long time, I didn't question any of it. When you grow up watching someone else get everything, you start to believe there must be a reason, that they deserve it more, that you're just less. So I adjusted. I stopped comparing. I stopped expecting fairness. I became easy, quiet, convenient. The child who didn't need much, who didn't cause problems, who didn't require attention. And the more I adapted, the easier it became for them to overlook me completely. By the time I was a teenager, I wasn't just invisible. I was useful. I helped around the house, stayed out of the way, and made sure I didn't interrupt whatever mattered more at the time, which was almost always Sophie. But what no one realized was that while they were pouring everything into her future, I was quietly building my own in the background. And the difference between us wasn't talent or opportunity. It was that I learned how to create something from nothing. Because no one was ever going to hand it to me. What they didn't realize was that being overlooked forced me to pay attention to things they never taught me. While Sophie had everything structured for her, I had to figure things out on my own. And that became my biggest advantage. I spent hours in libraries, teaching myself how systems worked, how code could solve real problems, how something small could turn into something scalable if you understood it well enough. It didn't happen all at once. It started with curiosity, then turned into obsession. By the time I got to college, I wasn't just trying to get a degree anymore. I was trying to build something that would change my life. I double majored, worked part-time, and spent every extra hour learning beyond what was required. And during my junior year, an opportunity showed up that most people would have ignored. A small business struggling with inventory issues needed help. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't pay much at first. And it definitely didn't look like something that would lead anywhere. But I took it anyway. I built them a system that worked. Something simple, but effective. They paid me more than I had ever earned before. And more importantly, they told other people about it. That's when everything started to shift. One client became three, three became 10. And suddenly, I wasn't just solving problems anymore. I was building something real. And if you've ever had that moment where something small suddenly turns into something bigger than you expected, you know exactly how fast everything can change when you finally find the one thing you're actually good at. If you've ever had to figure life out on your own, you know, this kind of moment hits different and it only gets more intense from here. That was the point where I stopped seeing myself as the forgotten one and started seeing what I could actually become. At first, it didn't feel like success. It felt like survival. I was working nonstop, sleeping 4 hours a night, living off cheap food and caffeine, and coding until my hands hurt. But the difference now was that everything I did had direction. I wasn't just trying to get through the day anymore. I was building something that could actually grow. The system I created evolved into something bigger, something that businesses genuinely needed. I turned it into a platform and gave it a name, Supply Sync. And once it had a name, it started to become real. Clients came in faster than I could handle. I had to hire people. Then more people, then structure everything like an actual company. By the time I was 25, I wasn't just running projects. I was running a team. By 26, we were making millions. By 27, we were expanding internationally. And suddenly, the same kind of companies I used to read about were reaching out to me with offers. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Numbers that didn't even feel real, hundreds of millions just to take what I had built and turn it into something else. And that was the part I couldn't accept. Because this wasn't just code to me. It was everything I had built from being overlooked, underestimated, and ignored. So I said no. Again and again. Until one offer came that was different. They didn't want to erase it. They wanted to grow it. And for the first time, I actually considered letting go. The negotiations took months. But when it was done, the number didn't even feel like the most important part anymore. What mattered was that I had built something undeniable. Something no one could ignore. And yet, the people who should have seen it first still didn't. Which is why what happened next mattered more than anything I had accomplished up to that point. Thanksgiving felt exactly the same as it always had. Same table. Same conversations. Same dynamic that never changed, no matter how much time passed. Sophie sat at the center of everything, talking about her wedding, her future house, her perfect life. While everyone listened like it was the only story that mattered, I took my usual place. Quiet. Unnoticed. Just observing like I had done my entire life. Plates were passed around. Laughter filled the room. And not a single person asked me anything that wasn't surface level. It was almost surreal how predictable it all felt. And for a moment, I thought about staying silent again, letting it pass like every other year. But then my uncle casually turned to me and asked, "So, Lily, how's work going?" That was it. That one question, asked without much thought, changed everything. I paused for a second, feeling every year of being overlooked sitting right there in that moment. And instead of giving the same simple answer I always did, I said something different. I sold my company. No one reacted at first. My dad frowned slightly. "I thought you worked for someone else?" I looked at him and said, "I did. Myself." That got their attention. Sophie laughed, like it was a joke she hadn't caught yet. "Okay, but what does that even mean?" And that's when I said it. Calm. Clear. Impossible to misunderstand. I built a company. I sold it for $280 million. The room went completely silent. Forks stopped mid-air. Conversations died instantly. You could feel the shift hit all at once. My mom stared at me like she was trying to recognize a stranger. My dad didn't say a word. And Sophie? She just looked at me like everything she thought she knew had just collapsed. "You're joking," she said quietly. I shook my head. I'm not. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being ignored. And just like that, everything changed. The same people who had spent years overlooking me were now staring at me like they were trying to rewrite every memory they had of who I was. My mom was the first to react, her voice shaking as she asked why I never told them. My dad just sat there in silence, like he was replaying every moment he had dismissed me and finally realizing what it meant. But Sophie, she couldn't accept it. Not like that. She said I embarrassed her, that I chose the worst possible moment to say something like this, that I ruined what was supposed to be her day. And that's when something in me finally clicked into place. Because every day had always been hers. Every conversation, every celebration, every moment that mattered had always revolved around her. And for the first time, it didn't. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just looked at her and said the truth as simply as I could. You never noticed me before. Why does it matter now? No one had an answer for that. Not her. Not my parents. Not anyone at that table. Because the truth wasn't something they could argue with. It was something they had lived for years without realizing. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and walked out without waiting for anything else. My phone started ringing before I even reached my car calls. Message. Questions. All the attention I had never gotten, suddenly appearing all at once. But I didn't answer any of it. Because I didn't need it anymore. And that was the real difference. It was never about proving them wrong. It was about no longer needing them to see me at all. And if you've ever spent years feeling invisible to the people who were supposed to matter the most, then you already understand what that moment feels like. If you've ever been overlooked your entire life, drop a comment because stories like this hit different when you've lived them. Because sometimes the biggest win isn't finally being seen, it's realizing you don't need to be